Hi everyone, it's Hannah Schooner or Schooner or Later, and this is my first video for Dungeon Master tips for those learning to Dungeon Master. Now, I was asked a few questions in the Facebook group that I've created, D&D Group Finder, and so in the beginning of my DM tip videos, I will simply be answering questions that have been asked of me. If you have any questions specifically for learning how to Dungeon Master, go ahead and leave a comment. I would be happy to answer them, but I would first like to touch on how the tips that I have will not be the total answer to being the perfect Dungeon Master. I will be answering from my personal experience, which means things that have worked for me. But I think that your job as a rising Dungeon Master is to absorb these Dungeon Master tip videos that myself and whoever else you watch on YouTube or other sources will be giving you, but find what works for you. No other Dungeon Master will have the perfect answer to your questions, but will simply speak from their own experience, and everyone learns and operates differently. So take what you can, leave what you don't want, and let's begin. My first question was, how do I make my world convincing? Now, there are a few ways to go about this. If your world is completely homebrew, there are plenty of materials online that are helpful for homebrew campaigns or one-shots, and I can leave a couple of those links below. First, what I like to do to make either a world that I have created or a world from a module that's already been published that I'm playing with my players, or preparing for my players, I should say, is appealing to their senses. This is a very easy way to quickly transport your players to the world that you've either created or are preparing for them. And so, what do they see? What do they hear? What do they smell, even? And in certain situations, maybe in a tavern or other places, what do they taste? What do they touch? Just a simple description of what their senses are experiencing in your world or scene or event can quickly make it vivid for them and therefore realistic and convincing. Next, decide how technologically advanced your world is and stick to that. An example of what might be unconvincing is if all of the NPCs that they have run into have swords, axes, simple weapons, and then suddenly they experience an NPC that has a gun or a blaster. That can quickly take them out of the world that they are in and make the immersion not so convincing. If you really want an NPC with technology that is far more advanced than the rest of the world, then maybe the technology isn't so stable. Maybe they are an inventor and they're the first person to use this kind of technology. So take that and run with it. Maybe they have to roll above a 15 for it to work, or it blows up in their face or something. But try to keep the technology all on the same plane so that it's more convincing and immersive, and they truly believe that this is a world that operates together and normally. Next, your political food chain. This is something that can easily be overlooked when creating a world, but I think it's really important and actually can really help it be convincing. So you have to think about what races exist in your world and how do they feel about each other. It's really hard to believe if all of the races just are existing in harmony and are indifferent towards each other. Like, the history of your world that you've created, there has to have been some kind of war, misunderstanding, that has brought them to this point in time that your players are experiencing. Different races will be allies with each other, different races will be enemies. Having a political food chain or a political system where, this race and this race will never work with each other because of the event that happened however long ago in their history. Or this race and this race will always defend each other because on this day in history their leaders signed a pact, or this leader saved this leader and they will forever be allies in harmony and things like that. And you don't have to even come up with what these events were initially, but having it set into place that there are allies and there are enemies can make a world realistic and convincing, because there isn't really, unfortunately, a world that exists where everyone likes each other. And as sad as that can be, it's a good way to make your world convincing to have politics involved. These are just a few tips that I have today for how to make your world convincing, whether you are writing a world or just presenting a pre-written world to your players. If you have any other questions, please leave a comment. If you have other resources that you feel would be helpful for this sort of thing, also leave a comment. I'll leave a few links in the description that should help you homebrew a world or something of the sort. If this video was helpful to you, go ahead and like and subscribe or leave a comment. Thank you, everybody. See you later.